The most important thing in the application process for Lehigh University is a student's transcript. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at the rigor of the coursework that you've taken over 4 years and the grades that you've received over 4 years. So that is always the most important thing, and again, the piece that we'll spend the most amount of time on. I would say the second thing that we look at is probably your activities, extracurricular involvement, commitment to your community, the ways that you're engaged here in your school are really important to us, and those are great indicators for the way you're going to be engaged in our community. So we spend a lot of time looking at your extracurricular activities, whether you've had a part-time job, things that you've been involved in the community. Those are all really important elements to us. We do look at standardized testing, your SATs or your ACTs, but we realize that those are just one piece to a much larger puzzle and a much bigger part of your story. We're also going to look at your essays and what you say about yourself. What are your values? What are the things that are important to you, and what are you passionate about? I would say all of those things are important. If I had to rank them in a certain order, I would say grades are always most important, followed by activities, maybe standardized testing, and everything else last. We read in a holistic fashion, so really all of those elements can be important in the process, and we pull different pieces from each of those components.
Okay. At Drexel, we use a holistic review process. So initially, the first thing we're going to look at is your transcript, what classes you've taken and what grades you've gotten in those classes. Because if you don't have the prerequisite requirements for those classes, you're not admissible to that major. We'll then also look at your SATs to make sure that you, again, will be successful in that major. The activities are important. We like to see you're a well-rounded student. And keep in mind, some majors are more particular than others. If you're looking at our music industry program and you don't have any involvement with any of the music field, not that you have to be a musician, but activities related to music, that would be a concern because you are reviewed by that department. But again, it's a holistic review. The activities, those sorts of things, recommendations are all important. Some majors it's just more important than others.
So I would say transcript is the first thing that we look at, absolutely. So GPA is not just the GPA, but what the GPA means. So what classes have you taken? Are they higher level courses? Have you taken APs if they're offered, IBs if they're offered? So seeing how you perform first in the classroom. And then the other things kind of just add to that. So testing, I think, is just an extension of what you've done in the classroom. Extracurricular is just an extension of what you've done in the classroom. Your essay, your recommendations are all extensions coming back to the classroom. So I think it starts with the transcript. It starts with what you've done in the classroom, and then everything else kind of just adds to that, if you will, from our review process.
So when we look at the applications, we start with the high school transcript. So GPA is usually the first thing that we look at, most important. Second would be the extracurriculars. So anything outside the classroom, that also includes the part-time job. If they have a side business that they're running online, all of those extracurriculars are actually second most important to us when we read. Third would be the standardized test scores, so the SAT, ACT, or if they are test optional, then a graded essay from 11th or 12th grade. Then we look at the essay and then recommendations, and our final piece that we look at is demonstrated interest as well. So opportunities to visit or do an interview or something that students that we encourage them to take advantage of.
So for the University of Pittsburgh, our application only asks for the academic information. We're only seeing your GPA, your high school classes, your transcript, things like that, and your SAT or ACT scores. Now with that, there is no space on our application to put in your activities or to add a resume or a letter of recommendation, but what we do have are our short answer questions, and this is where we want students to elaborate on their experiences as students. They're very short. We only ask for a very small amount of words for each one, about 200 to 300 words in total. And what it does is it gives the admissions committee a better idea of who you are as a person and less so much as a student, which we get from all of that academic information. So if there's something that you really want to highlight that you think would have been showcased on a resume or on a letter of recommendation, something like that, we always encourage a student to answer those short answer questions and expand on that and talk more about it, because they're very open-ended questions, and they allow a student to really explore or show the admissions committee what they were involved in and how it felt to them, or how it impacted them, and how show their passion for that.
I would say that in regards to acceptance and also for our merit scholarships, GPA is by far the most important. So that's why I do recommend the lower classes with the higher GPA, just because we do look at your GPA very importantly. And then I would say that SAT and ACT is probably the next level up. But we do a lot of admissions interviews, so students who aren't good test takers can tell us that if they do an admissions interview, because we'll take that into consideration as well if the student isn't a good test taker. So that being second, kind of take a grain of salt with that. And then I would say the next is essay, because we like to hear, which I'll say at the next part, but essay is the next most important, and then I would say activities after that, and recommendations I would say are probably the least important. We don't really look at recommendations at all. If we get them, we'll read them, but we really don't consider them all that much.
So with a few exceptions, notably like music and theater, where we look primarily at auditions, with our general application pool, we're looking at the GPA first, so the types of courses a student takes, how well they do in those. Then we look at the activities and involvement. We read the essay and letters of recommendation, and then if a student chooses to submit their test scores, we will look at those, but we don't weigh them very heavily at all, really. And for all of our programs, we're generally looking for just a strong student who looks like they can take on a variety of different academic challenges.